You might be thinking, what is an entrepreneurship professor doing in the kitchen? Well, this academic term, I am cooking up an influencer startup. And you may be wondering what that is, but if you've seen anyone who has a large presence in social media, they probably also have a money model that's making it pay for itself, and often it is way more than just what the channels are paying for. The creator economy is on track to be $500 billion in less than 2 years. And in the next 5 years, it could be over $1 trillion. So that means if we ignore the creator economy when we talk about entrepreneurship, we are missing a big part of the future economy. This term, I'm going to be teaching a course about just that. I'm Doc John, the Entrepreneurial Professor. I teach entrepreneurship at a university. And if you're wondering why I'm in the kitchen for the influencer startup, I also have a special feature that's very popular, family dinner. This course is set up to work like a creator community. So every week we get together for 3 hours in the evening and I bring something yummy to eat. Usually home cooked, not a pizza. And so what I'm going to do is I'll share with you what I'm doing in the course, but also I'm going to share with you as I get ready for family dinner what's happening every week. So if you're thinking about becoming a creator, then this is going to be a great opportunity to look at the creator economy through the lens of entrepreneurship. So if you want to join me in this journey, you'll get to check out what I'm making for family dinner each week, and you'll also get to hear about what we're going to be learning about in the class, and not just hearing about concepts and theories. We're actually going to be hands-on creating content and building money models. So let's get into it. This week, I'm going to be making a Moroccan chickpea stew while we talk about what an influencer startup is, what it means to create great content that connects with a money model, and also how to get started. Getting started starts with ideation. So that's going to be the topic for this video. And so you want to stay with me as we talk through it. But while we go, I'm going to get started. I'm going to start out with some onions, and we're going to talk about what do I mean by an influencer startup. So you may think, I know what a startup is, and I know what an influencer is, but what's an influencer startup? An influencer startup is built as a business, not just a hobby. So often, social media or content media is seen as a time waster, doom scrolling endlessly, and spending a lot of time not really accomplishing much. But when you look at some of the top creators in the creator economy, they're being very intentional about the way they teach, about the way they entertain, and about the way they build their influence. So this means not just randomly creating content, but having a strategy, having a plan, even a business plan for how you're going to build your influence, and then also how you're going to build your following, and then connect that to a money model that's going to make money for you. So one thing that's really interesting to me about social media is you see a lot of people doing it almost at random, just throwing content out there. And those that are making money in the content creator economy are not just doing that. They're actually creating content that drives to a very specific audience. And that's one of the things in the entrepreneurial model you do is what's called customer development. And customer development is really about finding a group of customers that you really know well, finding a problem that they have and solving that problem. And a lot of times we don't think of social media as problem solving, but we do go to social media anytime we have a problem and we want an answer to something. And the problem may be boredom. And so that may be part of what the content creator brand is about alleviating boredom. It's like creating that content that's going to be interesting for people. One thing you're probably already noticing, I'm not a chef. This is not something I do a lot or haven't had professional training at. So basically just say, hopefully no haters on the way that I'm chopping my vegetables here, but we're cooking up an influencer startup, and that's what this is really about. So if an influencer startup is about creating a business, one of the things we might want to do is just take a look at it through the lens of entrepreneurship. With entrepreneurship, one of the things I like to teach, and one of the tools that I use a lot when I'm doing entrepreneurial work, is the business model canvas. And that helps me really to see who the customer segment is that I'm supporting or servicing with a particular brand or startup. And so getting really clear on who that customer segment is really important, and then creating content directly for them. And so later in the term, we'll talk about what it is to create a niche, to niche down and to get very specific about the customers that you serve and the kinds of content that you're going to create that's interesting or compelling to them. But before we get into that, you might want to think about, why would we create influencer content? And it may not be for the reasons you might think. Some people might start an influencer brand because they want to be like Mr. Beast and have a following and really be the focus. But you may have a very different kind of business. It's really going to allow you to create content that draws people in, and then you may actually be encouraging them towards buying your product or using your service or buying digital products or something like that. So these are some of the things that can be reasons why you would do social media. What I would say here is you want to just get started. So if you're working on a media brand and you want to, you're thinking about maybe I could do this, or maybe you're feeling fearful of, I'm not sure if I can do this, I would say just start. So one of the things I find, I talk to a lot of people that want to be influencers, but they're like, well, I got to buy equipment and I got to learn how to tell stories and I have to learn how to handle lighting and all those kinds of things. And what I would say is just get started. Press record, make that terrible cringy video. If you want to see a terrible cringy video, go back to the very beginning of my channel. I still have my first video out there. The first one I did, it was 5 years ago, and by no means would I say I've arrived or I'm great at this or anything like that. But that first video is very, very cringy compared to what I create today. And I'm not embarrassed of it. It was the first attempt, and I pressed record and I started talking and I introduced myself. And then I started building on that, hopefully getting 1% better every day with every video, with every download. So that would be the first thing I would say is, if you're thinking about becoming a content creator, just start and then figure it out from there. So I just chopped up the onions. I'm ready for some garlic. The recipe I'm using is calling for 6 cloves. So I'm gonna peel those off here. And now I wanna talk about ideation. One of the things that's really important for any kind of entrepreneurial business is coming up with ideas. And what I like to say is you need lots and lots of ideas. And if you have an idea, come up with more ideas. If you have 10, 20, 50, 100 ideas, come up with more ideas. Why? Why would you keep coming up with ideas once you've already have an idea? Well, the reason is flexibility. As you start to experiment with any idea, you're going to find in some ways it doesn't really work, or some things may work, but whatever you find, you want to have other ideas to go to when something doesn't work out the way you expect. And what that can mean is that idea that was starting to work but now isn't working, you can go to a different idea, or one of the other ideas you have contributes to your current idea with, maybe a feature or an add-on or a delivery mechanism or something like that. So coming up with lots and lots of ideas can be really important right out of the gate. All right, so let's press this garlic. I've got my garlic press here, and I'll do these one at a time, make sure we get nice, good, fresh garlic for our Moroccan chickpea stew. As I'm working about this, I think about the idea of money models and some things we might do for money models. If I were doing this particular one regularly and I wanted to have a cooking show, one of the things I might look at is getting brand deals in place with companies like, let's see, what are the knife here is Hoshano, and the garlic press, I'm not sure where this is from, but anybody that's creating some of the things I'm using could become those that I might try to set up brand deals with. So one of the things we'll look at in this course is different ways that we can make money with our content creation, and brand deals is one of the things that can really drive that. So if you're starting to work on ideation, some of the things you might want to start to think about, what kinds of content do I like to watch or that I would like to create? And this can be anywhere from entertainment, it could be education, it could be a skill, how-to videos. You might be very interested in technology or virtual reality or cryptocurrency. So, first of all, just the kinds of content that you want to create, and also the format. So do you want to do a social media channel, a content media channel like YouTube? Do you want to do short form or long form video? Do you want to do interviews or podcasts, vodcasts? Do you want to do vlogs, even written blogs or newsletters? So these are all different kinds of content creation that you might pursue as a way to build an audience. The most important thing is create that audience and have a way to engage with them and keep them engaged with what you're doing. And in a perfect world, a way to connect with them off platform. So you're never tied to a particular platform like YouTube or TikTok or Facebook. As we saw not long ago, TikTok was shut down for a period of time. And if anyone was really depending on TikTok for their business, they probably felt that in terms of their money model. So some of the ideas that you want to be working on are the kinds of content, the kinds of format that you have. And also I would include in this things that you're able to do right away versus things that you maybe need to work on a little bit, or maybe don't have everything you need for. So you might start with simple talking head videos, or even very authentic, just talking to your phone, recording that way. as a starting point and then build from there. Next, we're going to work on some sweet potatoes. I've got 4 sweet potatoes here that we're going to both skin first and then put it into the stew. So I'm going to wash them. And next, we're going to peel these. So here's the way the course is going to work. For anyone who's taking the course, or if you're just interested in how we're going to approach it, the students are going to get together in what's called an incubator, which is really an entrepreneurship center that has a lot of space and a lot of resources. It has a green screen room. We have access to a podcast studio. There's a lot of open workspace. And there's also just some big open areas where we can meet to have a meal, also to share ideas, to do collaborations, to work on editing. We've got big screens so everyone can see how to do it. And we're going to look at all the techniques that go with this. So everything from just getting started, coming up with ideas for videos or content, actually scripting those content pieces and figuring out what you're going to cover, doing the research that goes with those, and then actually shooting the video to capture the content. And then it's ready for editing. And we'll look at different ways that we'll edit the content, techniques to be able to really display the content in the best way. And then post-production, getting that video ready to place on some kind of a channel, to promote it, to make sure that it has optimized features around it to get people to watch it and to click through to see it. And also just that connection point to whatever's next, driving to more content or pushing towards the money model. One of the ways we'll be learning a lot about the content creator economy in this course is through guest speakers. So not only will everyone be learning about techniques for creating content and preparing for content and getting it out into the marketplace and connecting it to a money model, but we're going to be talking to actual creators and influencers. Every week, I'll have a guest speaker who's going to come in and share their story of how they got started. What was it that got them interested in creating content media, and some of the first things that they did to get going, how they figured out methods for making money while they were doing it, and ultimately getting their channel or personal brand or their content influencer startup going in a sustainable way. We'll have students who have been very effective at creating content. One student who was part of our program a few years back created a massive following and just started to share how to be successful as a student in college. Ultimately put together some guides and some assets to help people to learn to do this as a money model. And was very successful, turning into a very lucrative and sustainable channel. Some of the guest speakers will also include professional influencers, those that have figured out how to connect with an audience to provide something really valuable for them, and then also leveraging that influence to build a business through affiliate marketing or brand deals or through ambassador programs and so forth. We'll also just take a look at how they make a living at it. What are the different kinds of revenue streams that they're able to create using content media to be successful? Students will get the opportunity to learn how to run a professional podcast studio. So there'll be an opportunity to create podcasts in a professional grade studio to be able to get both audio and video that's high quality. And so there'll be some opportunities to see how to use some of these more advanced capabilities that you may have to either pay a lot of money to build or rent from someone or get access to in some way, but they'll have some opportunities to try these things out and see how they work. One of our guest speakers is a professional video editor, a videographer and editor who will share some of their experiences standing up an agency, doing video work, both video capture and video editing for others. That's going to lead us into discussions about how to build a team to support an influencer startup. One thing that you notice as influencers get more popular, as they start to activate money models, is that they start to create a lot more content than seems possible. And especially if you've created any content like I have, it takes a long time to plan a video, to script it out, to record it, to edit it, to package it, to get it out in the world, to promote it. And so this can be very time consuming. And one of the things that most influencers do as they start to activate their money models and they want to expand their influence is they hire a team. They put a team together, those that can help them create the content scripting, who can put the video together, who can do the editing. And so they're able to do a lot more because they're able to go with others. And that's where, like all entrepreneurship, which I always like to say, entrepreneurship is a team sport. An influencer startup is very much the same way. It's a team sport. And if you have a good team, you have the ability to really expand your influence and expand your money model. So I've talked a couple times about content creation and money models. And so just to really point out what this course is about, is it's really about those two things. It's about creating content that ultimately engages and builds an audience, and then creating a money model that will allow you to, not just pay for the equipment and time and all those kinds of things, but actually fuel your growth and give you capital that you can reinvest in the business to grow your influencer startup. You might be saying, I'm really skeptical about this whole influencer startup thing. It just really sounds to me like an excuse to waste a lot of time in social media. Is this really even entrepreneurship? So what I want to say here is this is where the entrepreneurial process is really the part that distinguishes creating an influencer startup versus just having a lot of presence on social media. Now, I break down the entrepreneurial process in a very specific way, and it's not any official way or someone else's model. It's really what I've done in looking at all the models that are out there and a lot of the different ideas and different approaches that there are to what the entrepreneurial process is, and quite frankly, just based on my own experience. But what I've really found is that entrepreneurial businesses that grow and thrive ultimately follow 7 steps. And later in this course, anyone taking the course is going to go deep in all of these. And in some of the videos to come up, I will go deep in terms of how each of these steps work. But just to walk through them briefly, I already mentioned the first one, and that's really what we've emphasized today is ideation. That's the first step, and that's really coming up with lots of ideas. And this is one that I find a lot of people skip, because they just don't think they need to do it, or they have an idea they're so in love with that they don't think they ever will need another idea again. And that couldn't be further from the truth. So ideation is the first thing that really every entrepreneur should do, in my opinion, and the most successful entrepreneurs always do ideation, in my experience. The second area is experimentation. This is where experimentation is where you test things out and see if you like them. So today I'm making a Moroccan chickpea stew. I'm using someone else's recipe, so I didn't make this up, but somewhere along the way, I had to decide, do I even like this particular meal? And I do. I love it. It's fantastic. It's really yummy. It's one of the reasons why I share it with students when we're doing family dinner. But at some point, I experimented with this recipe. I said, let's make this. Let's try it out. And it was something that my family really enjoyed, and it was one that I really wanted to repeat. And so we're like, that idea works. Let's do that again. Now, if I were the kind of entrepreneur that just takes one idea and hones in and never does anything else, this might be the only meal I ever eat. And that's great because it's really good, but you might get tired of it. So ideas help you to not have that sense of boredom, and also help you to really adapt if circumstances change. It might be that all of a sudden kale is very hard to get, in which case I may need to make an adjustment. And I use spinach and kale in this recipe, so I might, in that case, just switch all the way over to spinach. Or I might find another vegetable that I like. I might find that watercress or something like that adds a different flavor or texture, and so I might experiment further. That next step of experimentation is really important. And you do this in 2 places. You do it in what's called content or, product development, as it's sometimes called in entrepreneurship, and also customer development. So this is where experimenting to find out who is the right customer for my particular influencer channel. Who is going to be a customer or who's a viewer that really, really likes what I'm doing. You really want to find what's called the ideal viewer profile, or sometimes in entrepreneurship, we call it the ideal customer profile, the ICV. I changed that for the influencer startup to say the IVP. Who's that ideal viewer profile that's really going to value and appreciate the content that you're creating? The next part of the entrepreneurial process is iteration. Before I move on, I'm going to start the quinoa in this recipe because this takes about 15 or 20 minutes, and so it's going to need to cook while I do some of the other things. So I wanted to get some of the bigger vegetables cut first, and now I'm going to make tricolored quinoa here. We'll get this started on the stove. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and boil some water here. Then I'll add 2 cups of quinoa. Also get a teaspoon of salt and 1 teaspoon of olive oil. Let that come to a boil, and then we'll get that started. While we have the olive oil out, we'll get 4 tablespoons of olive oil to go in with the sweet potatoes. While we're waiting for the water to boil, let's talk a little bit about the next stage in the entrepreneurial process, and that's monetization. That's building that money model that makes sure that there's income coming in to offset the cost of equipment and any kind of team fees or anything that's related to the cost of running it, but also to provide profit that helps you to pay for your time. And most importantly, more funds that you can use to reinvest to move the business forward. In this course, we're going to talk about lots of different kinds of monetization models, lots of different money models, different ways that you can create money, because a lot of times the thought is, I'll get to the point that the platform will pay me for views. But oftentimes a platform pays very, very little for views in comparison to the other opportunities that there are for creating revenue streams, whether it's digital products, whether it's services, whether it's fueling other people's business models with affiliate programs and ambassador programs, and the list goes on, and we'll take a deep dive on that throughout the course. Okay, it sounds like our water's boiling, so we're gonna add the quinoa. We're gonna put in 2 cups. So you have a nice multicolored, kind of tricolored quinoa here. We can mix in. Now we're gonna reduce the heat to low. We're gonna let that sit for about 15 minutes. Okay, so now that the quinoa's going, we'll start to add some of the seasonings to the main part of the dish. And we'll also talk about the next part of the entrepreneurial process. Number 5 is validation. So this is where you can use metrics, data, key performance indicators to validate the assumptions that you have. When you put a business model together, you make different assumptions about the business. You assume that there's enough market for the product to justify your investment in it. You assume that customers are going to want the product and find it useful for solving their problem. You're going to assume that your money model is something you can activate and that you can generate enough income to support the business. These are just a few examples. And so that validation process is something you do all the way through to make sure when I'm creating content, am I getting impressions from the algorithm for the different platforms that I'm using? Am I getting a good click-through rate? Are people actually staying past the first few seconds of a video or piece of content? Are they watching all the way through? These are things that you can see through data, validate your assumptions, and build on the cases where your assumptions are correct. When your assumptions aren't correct, you can use that same data to help you make different decisions in the future to try to move things forward. Okay, so now I'm going to add paprika and cumin. So I've got ground cumin and I've got turmeric. There we go. Got a hot Hungarian paprika to give it a little bit of zip. So with these, I'm going to do 2 teaspoons of each for these. So we'll measure those in here. My kids like to make fun of me for the way I say measure. I say it's measure. They say it's measure. When I say it, they're like measure. Anyway. All right, so let's get 2 teaspoons of ground cumin. 2. And we'll also do 2 teaspoons of hot Hungarian paprika. Smells so good. All right, 2. All right, there we go. Next, we have coriander, turmeric, and ginger. Go. So coriander, ginger, turmeric. All right, and I want to get a teaspoon of each of these. That gets us a nice blend of spices. Just like with your influencer startup, you're going to find that right blend of content and money model that really helps to drive things forward. Next, we want to add some cinnamon. So we got some cinnamon and we want half a teaspoon of cinnamon. We also want a teaspoon of both salt and pepper. So we'll do a teaspoon of salt, a little extra there, and a teaspoon of pepper. Okay, we're also going to put just a little bit of cayenne pepper, just a couple of pinches there. Just sprinkle a little in for some flavor. So the 6th part of the recipe for entrepreneurship is standardization. This is where we really want to start to create a standardized approach. We've discovered an audience for our influencer startup. We've started to create content that they like and that they're consuming, and we're getting good data and validation through the metrics. And now we want to create a process to work through those. And so one of the things we'll talk about in this course is how we create a standardized process, maybe even work through creating content in batch. So planning lots of content, scripting it, then recording a number of them, and then going through the editing process for that same block of content, and then going through post-production, getting ready to present it to the world, and even scheduling it out so that you can create a buffer, some additional time so that you can create content and be consistent without being in a rush. These standard operating procedures are what make a business really valuable and allows you to create consistent value for your viewers over time. And those are going to be the kinds of things that drive the money model in the best way. So now we're ready to start adding some of the larger components to our meal. I'm going to now add we've got garbanzo beans, but we also have, and those are our chickpeas, and diced tomatoes. So we'll start with our diced tomatoes. So the diced tomatoes are going to start to give our stew the liquid that's going to make it nice and moist. So we'll cut through here, get our diced tomatoes in. Next, we want to add vegetable broth. So this can be done with any kind of broth, really. So we can kind of blend that in, mix that all together. I'm putting in about 32 ounces to go with all the tomatoes. Is going to help to cook the potatoes down. It's going to kind of blend those tomatoes in nicely and start to mix all those spices together. Now we're ready for the chickpeas, for the garbanzo beans. So we're going to cut these open. We're also going to rinse them. We want to wash them real good before we add them into the mix here. I have a 29-ounce canister here. All right, so I rinsed those real good. I've kind of drained off all the juice that came in the canister. I mixed those in. There's lots of juice already in here between the vegetable broth as well as the tomatoes. So I'm going to just start to mix all this together. The last part for this would be the spinach and the kale. But what I do is I actually make this the day of, and so it's all ready to go, but it's going to go into a crock pot and slow cook leading up for a few hours before the class. So the spinach and the kale will go in right at the very end, maybe the last 15 minutes, so it doesn't get too overcooked, but it'll give it, still have a little bit of crunch to it. But the quinoa should be ready momentarily, and we'll be able to put that in with the rest of it. And then those will be added later, and it can garnish it with things like fresh cilantro or like a Greek yogurt. But before we finish up, I want to just talk about the last part of the entrepreneurial process, what I call proliferation. So this is where once you've found that perfect viewer and you've gotten engagement, you've grown that audience, you've found the money model through experimentation and through iteration, you've put that monetization model in place, and then you validated your assumptions. You've gotten to a point where you're ready to standardize your processes. And the last part is proliferation. And this is where you start to expand your influence and reach in lots of different ways. You may expand the number of money models that you have. And this is where you may go into other areas. You see creators like Mr. Beast, who's gone into many, many different areas, creating different types of content, even creating new channels, and also unique and different money models to produce revenue. Okay, looks like our quinoa is finished. So we can go ahead and open this up. Yeah, look at that. Really, really nice texture here. You can see all the color and everything. All right, so that's going to go right into the stew here. That's ready to go. Mix that in. It's going to give it some texture, some substance. So this is going to be really good. I'm very excited about it. I think it's going to be really yummy. I will certainly enjoy it, even if no one else is excited about it, but I hope it proves to be a good way to kind of bring everyone together as we kick off the class for the first time. There you can kind of take a look at it there. This will all go right in the crock pot and cook for a few hours. And then at the end, I'll add in the kale and the spinach. So hopefully that will prove to be a great meal. So this gives you an idea of what's coming this academic term as I do a course that is focused on content creation and the content creator economy called the Influencer Startup. If this is interesting to you, you can find a lot of videos that I've created. I have a whole playlist about launching an influencer startup. So if you want some techniques and some ideas, there's lots of good content there. There's videos from the last time that I ran this course. And stay tuned because I'm going to be sharing some of the guest speakers, some of the content that I'm creating, and some of the class discussions that we're having, so you can come along for the ride. In particular, you might want to check out a series that I did not too long ago called 5 Days as a YouTube Entrepreneur. And that'll give you an idea of exactly what I was doing each day to create content and also to build my money model. Thanks so much for being here. Please subscribe to the channel so you can get updates on what's coming next. Like the videos, and in the comments, give me ideas of what you would like to see me cook next for the family dinner, as well as questions you have or ideas you have related to building influencer startups. I'll put the recipe for the Moroccan chickpea stew that I created today in the description below if if you'd like to try it out yourself. Stay tuned for more content like this on the Entrepreneur Professor. Keep going.